from don't make it out. I know that I'm blessed. There's a few L's and millions, so turn that loss to a check.
And for those of you that don't know, I am sitting here with the one and only Joe Massey, top 1% of loan originators in the country. He's been in the mortgage business for 22 years now, and we had the pleasure of meeting because I noticed that he was moving into the digital kind of content creation, educational space, and I just found that to be super fascinating because I think anybody in this industry would agree that, especially for somebody that's been doing it for 20 years, hey, maybe we can't put our finger on it exactly, but something is changing, right? Like intuitively, I think a lot of us that have been doing it a while feel that and know that to be true. So it's like, what do we do? Do we double down or do we pivot? You know, so I'm curious to know for you, what was sort of the impetus? Like, what is it that grabbed your attention with personal brand content, creating digital courses, and how did you do that and begin to do that, but also continue to run the mortgage business? Because I feel like guys like us have been taught for years, like focus, singularity of focus,
right.
100% you're in it, right? Which makes it hard to look up and see what else is out there. So maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So, I've been in the mortgage business 22 years. And my core focus every single week, month, day, year was I want to be the best. And what I mean by that is I want to be the best person that understands credit reports and understands income and understands how to get a loan done and understands this product and that product and this 30-year fixed and this adjustable rate and all these different things. And I talk about it a lot with a lot of my friends. And I'm certain that every person you've had on this podcast also believes that they're the best, right? You don't get to be on this podcast without having the belief that you are the best in whatever your chosen discipline is. And I know you've had other mortgage guys on. We could have Gavin in here and he'd be like, I'm the best. And I'd be like, no, I'm the best. Okay, we're both the best, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But the really interesting thing is being the best in whatever your chosen discipline is not enough. You have to be the best. And you have to have the message going out to a wide array of people that, hey, I'm the best. I can help you. Here's why I'm the best. Here's how I can help. Here's how this benefits you. If you're the best at whatever and you're sitting in your basement and nobody knows that you're the best, you're going to be the best broke person. And so you've got to learn how to market yourself, whether that's through talking to people face to face, whether that's through social media, whether that's through mailers, whatever your chosen medium is to get that message out, you have to be the best at your discipline and be the best at marketing yourself. And the route that I've chosen for years is face-to-face, providing quality education in person. And now I'm moving to doing a lot of that online, providing quality education online, providing quality education via YouTube Shorts, via TikTok of all things, via Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and providing that information in short, bite-sized chunks that people can grasp. And then when they want more information, they click the like button or they go to the page or whatever it might be. And so that's been a really fun journey, actually.
That's yeah, and it's a journey that I'm just starting to kind of go down that path, and like I've researched it over the last couple of years, and finally I'm like, okay, this is where it's all headed. Right? Like, I think I just read something that said there are about 70 million podcasts. By 2030, there will be 110 million.
That means one out of every 3 people in the U.S. is going to have their own podcast.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Better have good quality content.
Yeah, I know. But for you, like, what is so actually, let me back up. So there's a guy that's really big in the personal brand space, Ryan Pineda. A lot of people have heard of this guy. He's out in Vegas. He's developed a media company, but also made a lot of his money through investment property, right? I think he owns 500 plus rental properties and does big syndicates now. And now, of course, he's involved in a bunch of different industries. But he's got a podcast called The Wealthy Way. And he talks about, there's 2 ways to build trust with somebody. One of those is transfer of trust, right? So, there's my buddy over here who decides to show up and I go, hey, Joe, meet, Bob, and Bob's amazing at this, and Bob, meet Joe, Joe's amazing at this. And so you guys connect as a result of me, and there's just an inherent trust built into that because of our relationship, right? But the other way is time. And one of the benefits of having a podcast or developing a personal brand is we might spend an hour doing a podcast, but over time it might reach millions of people.
That's a million hours of time that you've spent with somebody that you didn't spend a million hours.
That's right.
You spent 1 hour or maybe two after cleaning it up.
Sure.
But all of those people have listened. They've spent an hour with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are you doing specifically? Because I noticed on your Facebook profile, it says digital creator. Mm-hmm. Then it says mortgage loan originator after that.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I'm like, wow, man, because that's like a fear, not a fear, but it's definitely like a question in my head. I feel like anybody does anything for any length of time, and it's hard not to develop an identity around what you do, right? Even though it's like, no, I'm not what I do. I'm actually somebody else, right? But when did you make the decision to update that publicly and say, hey, I'm a digital creator now? And what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so this is going to be a highly unsophisticated answer, which I think you'll grow to love from me. My assistant put that on there at some point in the past when she was in charge of the marketing. So I don't know exactly when that happened.
Okay.
But, she told me, hey, we're going to put this on here because it's important that people know that that's something that you do. Mm-hmm. You're also Joe the loan guy, but you're also Joe the digital creator, that you're going to give tips about mortgages or tips about how to pay off your home or tips about how to get out of debt, whatever it might be. And I said, hey, cool, you're in charge of the Facebook page. Go for it. Put it out there. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that it's sort of like your resume, right? Mm-hmm. What do you do? Well, I do loans and I do this and I do that. Mm-hmm. I think it's just a good way to say I do more than just loans. I don't know if you notice, it's also on there that I run, that I lift weights.
Sure,
simple stuff, but people like to know what are the things that you do.
So you're a huge runner. You've been running for how many years?
Oh, man. So I played football in high school and college, and, that's obviously a sport that doesn't really translate to doing a whole lot after college. So started running and doing things like Tough Mudders and Warrior Dash, and have done some, sun up to sundown runs. I've done a quadrathlon, which is a bike run, cross-country ski and snowshoe. Done lots of different events like that, and that's been going on, since, 2 or 3 years after I got out of college. I kind of took a break. My body was pretty tired after football for 9 straight years and wrestling. But got antsy and just started doing running events. They're easy to find. You can find a 5K just about any weekend. Started doing that and still really enjoy it. I don't train that hard. I run on the treadmill 20 minutes every morning. And then, when one of my buddies is like, hey, we're doing this event, do you want to come do it? Sure do. And I'll put it on the calendar and, sort of dial up the training about 6 weeks ahead of it just to be ready to go.
Talk a little bit about the importance and the value of, exercise at a high level, like how that has helped with your business.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I've been the same way, like health and fitness has been a huge part of my life long before I ever got into the mortgage business. But, I find that super successful people, not all of them, like you don't have to be super into health and fitness to make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. I just find that a lot of people that have a lot of money or make a lot of money are also really involved with their health and fitness. But what is that for you? Like, is it a mindset thing? Is it you're trying to accomplish a particular physique, or what is that about for you?
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting what you said is super successful people are often involved in health and fitness, and you wonder which came first, the chicken or the egg. Mm-hmm. Did they become really successful and then they said, oh, I should go to the gym? Or were they going to the gym and then became really successful? Mm-hmm. And I think it's a little bit of both. But for me, it's not really about trying to achieve any goals or anything like that. I enjoy it, right? I'm sure you enjoy getting up, having breakfast. I do too. You know what? For me, it's automatic. I get up, I hit the treadmill, I lift weights for 40 minutes, and I go get breakfast. It's like sleeping. It's like going to the bathroom. It's just an automatic thing that I enjoy. Makes me feel good. Some people will tell me, they're like, oh, I hate the treadmill, or I hate going to the gym. And my response is, well, that's okay, but find something you do enjoy. Maybe it's walking the dog for 30 minutes, or maybe it's paddleboarding, or maybe it's pickleball or yoga. And I've done all of those things and enjoy them. And for me, the one that's easy is I always make sure that wherever I live has a nice gym so I can walk right there, treadmill, weights, I feel good. So it's just it's like an automatic thing. And if I get out of it, you get busy, you're have morning appointments, you can't go. 3 or 4 days later, I'm like, man, I kind of feel crappy. And I'll look back at my schedule and be like, oh, well, I haven't been to the gym since Sunday.
Yeah, it's amazing because I feel like when, and I've had sort of fits and starts my whole life, right? I would say in general, I exercise and work out more than I don't, right? But I think, maybe when COVID happened, like I started to just develop like my habits weren't as strong for whatever reason. And I had kind of gotten away from it. And it's amazing how like when you don't work out or you don't make it a priority and some time goes by, it's just mentally, it's so hard to do it, right? It's like you're having to recreate this momentum. But then, like you said, once you are doing it and you're doing it consistently and now you stop, now it almost feels uncomfortable to not do it. You feel like you're almost letting yourself down. You don't feel as good. You're not thinking as clearly. Your energy isn't there. There's so many benefits that come from it. Has this become just a part of your morning routine where it's like clockwork? Is it 7 days a week, 5? Like, walk us through kind of your morning routine and that part of it.
Yeah, well, one thing to be clear, I'm no saint when it comes to going to the gym. There are certainly days I wake up and hit the snooze button and I'm like, today is not the day, right? But it's pretty straightforward. I set my clock for 5:20. I get up and my gym is right in the complex that I live in.
5:20? Okay.
So, I'll, have bad habits, get up, scroll Facebook for 15, 20 minutes, see what's happening and be like, okay, I got to get up now. 5:35, 5:40, put on my shorts, my tank top, go to the gym, 20 minutes on the treadmill, 40 minutes of weights. And one thing that I do is the first day I go to the gym for the week, no matter what day, if I go on Monday, Tuesday, you always do legs. You have to do legs because even if that's the only day that you get in, your leg day will take care of everything else, right? So for Monday is legs, Tuesday is chest and back. Wednesday, I go to yoga. I've started doing hot yoga about a year ago, and I could go on the benefits of that for hours. Thursday, I'll do shoulders, Friday, arms. And then one of my favorite things to do is a Friday evening workout. So there's a lot of younger people that live in the complex that I'm in. And Friday night, they're all going to the bars, they're going out, they're going this, that. I can go Friday night at 7:30 and have the entire gym to myself. I can do an entire full body workout and there's not one other person in the gym. So Friday night workouts are a lot of fun by myself, headphones on, and just have a good time. And then, I like to do something active on the weekends, whether it's paddleboarding or, going for a hike or doing something. So it's just, I don't know, I enjoy it. And then again, let's be clear. That's my schedule for 5 days. I don't get that every week. Oftentimes it's 3 days a week. The one thing I never skip is I never skip leg day and I never skip yoga. Those are the two things that if I've got morning appointments or whatever, it's not on Wednesday.
How long have you been doing yoga for?
A little over a year, actually right at a year as of this recording.
What got you into it?
The woman I was dating, she really enjoyed it. She was going 3 days a week and she was like, hey, do you want to go try it? And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, it's hot. You'll probably really enjoy it. And it's hot yoga. Like they have it cranked up to like 106, 107 degrees.
Like a power thing?
It's a smaller place, but similar.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And, I went the first time and it was an incredibly good workout and I'm pouring sweat. I'm like, how does this make sense? I'm just standing here. I'm not doing anything, but my heart rate's 160. And ever since that first time, I never miss a Wednesday. I love it.
Man, so for a short period of time when I first moved here, I dated a yoga instructor as well. And so, it became a big part of my life. And then, I find for me, it's like a lot of it changes, but I still find a way to get back to some sort of exercise. It might be like I'm all in on running and, I've got an addictive personality. So it's like, so it's either like I'm all in on running and then it's like, fuck that. Now I'm into just lifting weights. I'm going to be a bodybuilder. Okay, now my body's too big or sore. And so now I'm going to do yoga. So it always seems to change, but there is a running theme with it. The only thing with me is like, I can't say that I definitely enjoy how I feel once it's done, but I don't know. Like it's probably 50-50. Like 50% of the time I'm like, dude, I do not want to go. I don't want to wake up and go running. Like that sounds like horrible, except for that I have enough muscle memory to know now that how I'm going to feel afterwards is worth the like sacrifice of actually getting to the point of running. Same thing with the workout for yoga or for the gym. But you know, are you always feeling like I want to go do this? Or are there days where you're like, I don't want to go do this, but I'm going to do it anyway because either it's a commitment I made with myself or it's just who I am now. And like, I need to do it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say 99% of the time I want to go.
Want to go.
Yeah, but there's days where I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to go today. Here's what I do. I don't go. Because I'm like, I'm just going to choose to stay in bed. I'm not in the Tour de France. I'm not on the pro bodybuilding circuit. So I don't have anybody to answer to. And some days I'm like, I'm going to enjoy sleeping in for another hour. Hit snooze and go back to sleep. So if I don't want to go, I don't go.
By the way, that's like a super enlightened I think like perspective, because I feel like on the days where I'm like, I'm not going to go, there is just this mental part of me that's like, you fucking bum.
Right.
Like
you feel guilty.
I feel guilty for not doing it. So to be able to be in a place where you don't feel guilty for not doing it, I think it's all in perspective, right? It's like the days where you don't feel like doing it, that you give yourself a pass. There's probably some reassurance with your self-worth and that self-talk that says, but Joe, dude, you're a healthy person. So it's all good, right? Like I'm not the guy that's not going to go forever and eat like shit forever and put on 50 pounds, right? So it's all good. I don't feel like going. I'm not going to go.
I'm just not going today.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to go to the gym.
Yeah. When you got into the mortgage business, what was the like... And I think a lot of people in our industry, both in the mortgage side of things and with real estate, you know, we get into the industry because we know we can make a lot of money and we know that there's a lot of freedom and flexibility in it. And I think, you know, especially for a lot of agents, that's the drive, but then they're in it and it's like, holy crap, this is way more work and effort than anybody realizes that's not in the industry, right?
This is not $1 million listing.
This is not $1 million listing. It can be a grind at times. And it's like any business, you know, you're basically an entrepreneur and you've got to be a self-starter. You got to be self-motivated. You got to be able to deal with rejection. You got to learn how to sell. You know, there's so many different skill sets that you can develop being in the industry. But what was it for you? Like when you first got in, were you recruited into the business? Did you choose it? And what were you trying to accomplish? Was it just sounds like a good career, or I'm going to get rich?
Oh, man. I hope I'm going to give you the most original answer you've ever had for this question. I fell ass backwards into the mortgage industry. So I graduated from college in December of 2001, so immediately following 9/11. And I went to Colorado School of Mines, and I had a degree in economics, which was really slated to work in the petroleum industry, to be a bridge between engineers and management, was this economics degree to sort of bridge this gap in petroleum companies. Well, immediately following 9/11, petroleum companies were not hiring anybody, certainly not new graduates. And trying to find a job, couldn't get any interest, moved back home, back in with my parents after college. That's a little embarrassing, right? And I'm sitting around whining, as you know, new graduates have a tendency to do when they don't have a job. And my mother was getting tired of listening to it. And she said, you know what, Joe, there's not going to be any more whining around here. She's like, I don't want to hear any more whining. You need to call the database of everyone that you worked for during college. I had done 3 or 4 internships, a couple at mortgage companies. She said, you need to call every one of those people and say, hi, I've graduated. I don't know if you remember me or not, but I'm looking for a job. She said, how many people are on that list? I said, I don't know, 20. She goes, great, call all 20 of them. And then if none of them interview you or give you a referral, then you can come back to the dinner table and you can whine. But until that time, I don't want to hear any more whining. And I was like, of course, rolled my eyes, wait 3 or 4 days, complain a little bit. She's like, no more whining. And then finally, eventually, I needed money and did what she said. And I made 7 phone calls. I didn't even get through the whole list of 20. Made 7 phone calls, had an interview, went in, had a job a week later in a mortgage company called Aurora Loan Services. And it was an entry-level, basic, not fancy. But you know what? They gave me a job. They started giving me a paycheck. And what do you know? 22 years later, all because my mother was tired of listening to me complain.
That's amazing. And what kind of, did your mom run a business or?
She did. Yeah, both my parents. So my parents, they ran a business together. They ran several businesses together. They actually started in the construction management business in the 80s doing construction for the airlines. So they built things like hangars. They built flight kitchens, ground service equipment buildings, and moved around a lot. Did work for Eastern Airlines, Texas Air, Continental, United, and moved to Denver in 1991 for the construction at DIA. And my parents were the construction managers for everything that United Airlines built at DIA. So if there's a United decal on it, they oversaw that construction.
That's unbelievable. So what was that like, growing up with two parents that were entrepreneurs, and I'm sure you have talked to them about it, but what was that like for them too? I'm always fascinated because in our industry, we get to see a lot of different careers and and there's so many out there where I'm like, holy cow, that exists.
Who knew that was a job, right?
Of course it does, but wow, I never thought that in a million years. And so it's how did they get into doing that? And what was that like for you? And were there any really valuable lessons that you took from them being entrepreneurs that maybe, some people might not receive those lessons because they're growing up in a household where their parents work a W-2 job?
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you a couple things. Number one, problem solving, right? You're building a major facility. I mean, imagine renovating your home, right? You're renovating a bathroom. There's always problems that come up. Now multiply that times 100,000 square feet. Right? There's going to be problems that come up. There's this supply you can't get, or this contractor that doesn't show up, or this problem, or you can't pour concrete because of the weather. And what I learned from my parents was problem solving. Hey, we're going to figure out a way. And they had a phrase. My dad always said, it doesn't rain on my job, right? We're pouring concrete and they're like, the weather says it's going to rain. He's like, I don't care. It doesn't rain on my job. Figure it out.
I love that.
And so problem solving, and I could go down millions of rabbit holes on that. And then customer service. So at any given time, my parents' company only had one client, right? It was only the airline they were working for at the time, whether it was Eastern, Texas Air, Continental, United. They only had one client, and they had to keep that client happy, or else they could potentially be out of business, right? So one thing I'll never forget my mom taught me, do you know the sound of making money? That is the first time the phone rings. Do you know the sound of losing money? The fourth time it rings. She wanted the phone picked up on the first ring all the time. It doesn't matter if it's 6 a.m., noon, 7 p.m., midnight. If that phone rings, that is your client and they want something. Pick up the phone, find out what they want, and deliver it to them. And it might be as simple as saying, hey, can you, answer this question? Or it might be as something as, can you move to Denver and build an airport for us, right? You never know what the client wants, but when they're calling, they want something, answer it on the first ring and help with whatever it is they want.
Yeah, that is so underrated, right? I think that they're, Amazon built, one of the largest companies in the world now as a result of customer service. Tony Hashi with Zappos, right? He was big on customer service. And, sometimes you wonder, how do some of first of all, I understand there's a business problem in it, right? So they're outsourcing stuff to another country. And maybe it's, for whatever reason, they're so big that they feel like they don't need to care. But it's such an important, it's been ingrained in me how important that service level is with clients. And it always amazes me when I come across lenders where I hear stories of them being rude or just having these just not paying attention to that sort of thing, you know?
I always think about it. If the phone is ringing, the client has stopped everything in their day. They've stopped taking care of their kids. They've stopped doing their job. They have stopped cooking dinner, and they're calling you because they want to do business with you. Make it as easy as possible, right? So many people will say, okay, thanks so much, Mr. Client. Go onto my website, fill out all this information. I'll call you back in 2 or 3 days. Or they call us and we say, you know what? You're right here. Let me take 15 minutes and ask you some personal questions. Where do you live? Where do you work? How much money do you make? Let's look at all your information. Let's get you the answer right now, Mr. and Mrs. Client, because you've stopped your day. I'm willing to stop my day too, so we can do business together. In all industries, get out of that and want to assign work back on the client, which is another rabbit hole I could go down, like self-checkout. at King Soopers. I hate self-checkout. You know what? Yeah. If I'm going to self-checkout, I want a discount.
Right. Totally.
I don't work here.
Yeah.
So I want to go through the regular checkout. I understand the line might be a little bit longer, but I get to interact with the person behind the counter, say hi, make sure they're having a nice day. They bag up the groceries and I leave. I think we get into so many systems. Mr. Client, I want you to fill out all this information. That way you know it's correct. Well, I see the point of view there. My approach is different, and I understand there's two differences to this. My approach is, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I want all your information so I can get to know you, and I'll type it in for you to make it easy. Can you spell your first and last name? And I understand both of those can be really successful. I've just chosen the route with more hand-holding, more of the one-on-one interaction of let us really serve you, Mr. and Mrs. Client.
And I think it's a great approach. And I've been on both sides of that coin where, right now we've got metrics specifically tied to conversion with lead to application, right? And you're always going to have a higher conversion if you can take the app over the phone because that is the lead call, right? Yep. So you're controlling it. I think that the other perspective that I've had about it is, okay, if I do a great job up front selling value and here's why we're different and how we're going to help you differently than other lenders out there, and this might just be my own BS that I've convinced myself of, but it was almost like it was a small barrier that they had to commit to. It was like a small ask, right? Mm-hmm. To take 10 minutes, fill out our questionnaire. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to fine tune it and tweak it and make it perfect before we do anything with it. But if somebody couldn't take 10 or 15 minutes to do that, then, what's this experience going to be like when we're further down the line with the process? And so I have been successful with both, but now that I've got a team, I want them to take everything over the phone if they can. And, sometimes the client's just like, dude, I'm way too busy. And, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Here's the link.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think that's an important point that I really like what you're saying. Not everybody can shift to one or the other, right? Some people will talk to, and they're like, all my clients fill out their application online every time. And I'm like, cool. How many of those from the time you talk to them, how many of those do you get a completed application? Well, 50%. That means 50% are calling me or Darik so that they can do the application over the phone, right? Now, not everybody goes through an application over the phone with me. There's 10% that they say, hey, I'd really like to do it online. Cool. Here's your link. I'll look forward to seeing it in 20 minutes. Yeah. And I think so many people can't adapt on the fly, right? Because you don't have to pick one or the other. You have to have your preferred method. But then who do you really adapt to? The client. Yeah. They're the one that called, that wants to do business with you. How can 100%. I make it easy for you, Mr. and Mrs. Client?
This is actually why I'm so big on scripts. And this is another thing. I feel like my whole life has been a constant, which way do I like? And I can see it from both points of view. But, scripting to me is so important not because I believe having an exact script that I create is going to work for you because you're a different person. But if you get really, really good at reading a script, chances are think of any famous actor, right? I don't know, I'll pick one. Denzel Washington. This dude is never stepping on a set without a script. The difference is he's read that script 1,000 times, so now he can inject his own personality. The script itself and what he's communicating is now second nature. So really, he can be more present. He can listen. He can pay attention to creative cues to deliver a more powerful message, right?
He's not trying to think of a response.
That's right. Because it's just like second nature. I take that from, when I used to do magic professionally. I had to develop patter, right? Yeah. Well, if I'm trying to just do the sleight of hand, I'm so focused on the sleight of hand that it's hard for me to do that and think of what I'm going to say. Right. But if I have the sleight of hand part down and I've rehearsed it 1,000 times, that's second nature. So now the only thing I need to worry about is how I'm going to deliver the patter to the audience for the greatest effect. Right. And that's what you see the difference between a great magician and a lousy one. And 9 times out of 10, it has nothing to do with the trick itself. It has to do with their presentation. Right.
That's exactly right. Which comes back to, you could be the best magician, but if you don't have the marketing and the presentation around it, you're going to be the best broke magician sitting in
You're
your
going to be the best broke magician. And I think I've come around to that probably a couple of years ago, where I'm like, okay, like there's only so many phone calls I can make, right? There are only so many meetings you can take. And that's great for somebody that's happy with a business that is restricted by their time, right? But I always looked at it as like, if I'm not growing, like I'm going out of business. There's always, and there's always been this sort of healthy fear I've had to like drive me to create and get better, right? And I think that, now I'm at a point where it's like, okay, how do I scale? And even from that, I'm like, who do I need to involve to help me scale? Because my genius isn't necessarily creating content or identifying personal brand or, coming up with posts, but somebody else, that is their area of genius. So how do I get them involved?
Right. How do you get them on your team?
Mm-hmm. And so for you, like, as you kind of enter this other space, how much of it are you learning personally, and how much of it are you delegating out to somebody?
Yeah, this is such an embarrassing question to answer. I'm learning 100% because I love to know every single facet of my business. I have great processors and great assistants and great closers that work for me in my mortgage business. If any one of them is sick or any one of them is not at the office, I can pick up their job and do it. Now, it's not the highest and best use of my time. It's the highest and best use of their time to be doing it while I'm out originating business. But I like to know that business from A to Z. And I'm doing the exact same thing in my digital content creation. For example, I'm editing my own videos. I've learned how to use a video editing software called Camtasia. Okay. And some people are like, Joe, you could go on Fiverr and do that for $50. I'm like, I know that I could, but I want to know how to do it. And then I can do it, learn it, understand it. And then when it's time to outsource it, which maybe it is already time, but I'm enjoying it, but I can send it over to somebody and say, hey, I want you to use this type of frame rate and this type of, cuts from audio to video. And I can have an educated conversation with whoever that person is that I'm going to be delegating that to. So that's probably a bad answer.
No,
maybe your listeners don't want to hear that. I like to do everything.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I don't think that's an embarrassing way to answer at all, man. I believe in that. Same thing with me. I think anybody who grows a team in the mortgage business, at some point they didn't have a team and it was just them, right? When I came to Denver, it was me. I was processing. I was literally everything from A to Z.
I've done the same.
So, and my team knows that, right? So there's a healthy, I don't know, I wouldn't say there's a healthy fear, but it's like, they know that if I had to, I could do it myself. And I think it sounds to me like you're just in that place where A, you're enjoying it and there's no shame in that. And B, you're learning enough to be dangerous so that eventually you can't, you already know how to build a team, or you've been successful at that. So I imagine you'll do the same thing with this, but maybe you're just not there yet and you're enjoying the process along the way. And you'll know enough to be dangerous so that, somebody can't take advantage of you, right?
You can manage to it. If somebody's like, hey, it's taking me 8 hours to edit this video, I'm like,
BS, that takes 2 hours, right?
It takes 2 and I'm incompetent.
Yeah, right.
You should be doing it an hour and 45. Right? So you can manage to it. And the other thing that I share with my team, I will never ask my team to do something that I am unwilling to do. So whatever I'm asking you to do with getting insurance or calling the client and asking for this or asking for these documents, I am willing to do the same. I have done the same. You're just now the person that I am asking to do it. And To do it with you. I'll show you how to do it. And then when I hand it over to you, I expect you to do it, but I'm never going to ask you to do something that I wouldn't do myself.
Not to deviate too much from where we were going, but how are you holding your team accountable to something? Because a lot of times I find myself thinking 1,000 things, right? So it's like, we'll have a team meeting and I'm rattling off all the stuff that needs to be done or whatever it might be. But then the next day I've got a bunch of new stuff that I need to talk about. And so I've really struggled with, now it's the next day, I've got the new stuff to talk about, but, going back and checking in on the stuff I asked them to do before without it being this micromanaging and like, do I really want to be the guy to create this long-winded list where I'm constantly bringing out and like going back through everything? Like, how do you solve that problem?
Yeah. So the way I did it is I did take the time early in my career, or not early in my career, early in building a team where I took one file and I processed it myself. And I wrote down every single thing that I did on that transaction from the time the phone rang until the loan was sold. What is every single thing I did? And after that was done, took about a month. After that was done, I went back and put it into a list of what order should it occur, and then who would do it. The loan officer does this, the processor does this, the underwriter, the closer. And so now we have a checklist. And so when that file comes in, it's on Excel and it's a shared document that everybody sees, you know, the John Smith file. Here's what I've done this step. The next person does this step. And here's where the accountability has become so critical is if there's a task next to it, it doesn't say processor, it has that person's name. Don, you're responsible to get the insurance. Joe, you're responsible to lock the file. Vicky, you're responsible to send out the closing disclosure. Nicole, you're responsible to go over the closing disclosure with the client. And so what'll happen, and this happens 5% of the time, you get somewhere and you don't have something. Let's just, again, make up, you don't have the insurance. And you pull up the checklist and the insurance is blank. Well, I'm not trying to say, hey, I thought you were going to do it. Well, I thought you were going to do it. Whose name is next to that? Dawn, we don't have insurance on John Smith. I need this 5 minutes ago. And so there's no, well, I thought so-and-so, or I thought this person. That's your name. You need to go get it. And you only have to do that about 3 times. And then it won't happen anymore. Right.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's how I do it, is by not just a checklist, but a checklist with their name on it. And then, you know, celebrating success as well. They participate in closed transactions. Sure. They get a bonus, et cetera.
Sure.
And then, you know, reminding them that, hey, there's another person down the line from you. I'm not mad. The client will get over it, but who you've disappointed is the next person down the list. You've disappointed the underwriter. You drop the ball for them, and then you drop the ball for the closer, and then you drop the ball for this person and this person. And let's not forget the client too. You drop the ball for them. You have that conversation 3 times, you don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah, you know, you touched on something that I want to elaborate on, and that's you disappointing the underwriter. And it could be anybody, but I'll just pick underwriter as the example. But, you know, and this is not me judging other loan officers, but something I've noticed in my career is a lot of loan officers have conflict with operations. It's sort of like, you know, just in general, just right? Sales and operations tend to have, you know, conflict. But I always looked at it as, man, if you're a loan officer and you're submitting a really clean file to an underwriter, over time, that underwriter's going to notice how clean your files are. They're human beings. If they're underwriting loans for 10 different LOs and 2 of them are constantly turning in crappy files, or, you know, and another 2 are giving them shit on everything, and it's always conflict, and you're the one that's like, it's super dialed in, it's super clean, and you're working with them in a way that's showing respect and giving them dignity for their role. I've never tracked it, but I can only imagine that as a loan officer, you're probably going to fund more loans and make more money over time, because that shit adds up and it's intangible.
Who's going to go to the front of the line?
Yeah,
right? If you've got somebody who's really cool and always does a good job, and you've got somebody else who's a total jerk and does a crappy job, who's going to the front of the line?
Yeah, totally.
Every time, right? You catch way more flies with honey than you do with vinegar.
That's what my wife says.
You know, right? She's a smart lady.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about like your current, and without bringing the digital stuff into it yet, or the content, but what is your current play? Like, how are you staying relevant? Are you running a play like with themed work days every day? And really, I guess what I'm asking is your prospecting time. What does that look like? Do you have that time blocked? Is it the same time every day in the calendar? Is it a combination of phone calls and face-to-faces? Or, you know, what does your prospecting look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So my prospecting is pretty straightforward. So The first Monday and the first Tuesday of the month, I have 2 real estate offices that I'm partnered with, and I go to their team meetings. So on Monday, I drive to Colorado Springs. On Tuesday, I drive to Loveland. And that's the first Monday and Tuesday of the month.
Okay.
Then beyond that, on Wednesdays, we check in with our database, right?
Okay.
So we do what's called alphabet calls.
Okay.
So beginning the first week of January, we call everybody that has ever closed a loan with us whose last name ends in A. And then the next week, we call everybody whose last name ends in
said
B.
we, so is this something you and your team participate in?
Yep, myself and my loan assistant, Nicole.
Okay.
So she and I are making these calls.
So if there's 100 people with the last name with an A, each of you get 50 and you're just dialing 50
That's right.
on Wednesday?
Yep.
Okay.
And it's very simple. Hey, Darik,
Okay.
it's Joe Massey. It's been a while since we checked in. Wanted to see how everything is going with your loan. Are you getting your mortgage statements? Are you having any troubles? Do you need to consolidate any debts? Are there any financial issues that we should talk about? You're doing great. Fantastic. Would you do me a favor and keep me in the front of your mind if any of your friends or family ever need to buy or refinance their home?
Cool.
And we can do that just over and over and over again. So I call
Is she saying the same thing?
She
your
is.
assistant? Okay, cool.
Yep. And she just says, hey, it's Nicole over at Joe Massey's office. And she's worked for me for 8 years. So or 9 years now. So she has a relationship with a lot of these people as well. And we start with A's, and every week do 1 letter. By the end of June, you're at the Z's. You start over July 1st with the A's.
That's cool.
By the end of December, you're at the Z's. You've talked to every person in your database 2 times. So
how much time are you spending preparing for those calls? Like, I feel like on one hand, just do it and it's just a check-in and it's the same with every single person. But then you'll have some guys that, or women as well, that will, like, I don't know. Hey, they bought 2 years ago. Yeah, they'll do all of this research, and now before you know it, it's 45 minutes into the day, and they haven't made a single call.
Yep.
But there might be a perfect blend of both. But how are you approaching it?
I do not do any research.
Okay.
So we have a running spreadsheet, and we have CRM and systems just like everybody else does. But we literally have, it's called a master spreadsheet, or it's called the master database is what it's called. And every client that closes, we type in first name, last name, phone number, address, interest rate. That's it. And then when it's Wednesday, we sort that and we print that from A to A, I guess. And then we print it, we divide it in half. I take the first page, she takes the second page, and we dial. I don't look at Zillow, I don't look at Value Check, I don't look up their file. Now, if they say, oh, I'm so glad you called because I had a question on my loan. Great, let me get it pulled up here. And then I have a little, how's the house? Or did you have kids? What's going on? And by that time, I've got it pulled up and I can answer their questions. So there's no research, there's no homework. And then the next week, maybe we've closed somebody who was a B during this week. Now we've input them on the spreadsheet. When we print the Bs, they're on there. And I guess the other thing that does say the date that it closed, so I can have a relevant conversation with her, right? Hey, I saw you closed last week, right? But other than that, it's those 6 fields, and we just print and dial.
Now, what about the Monday and Tuesday? You don't go to those office meetings, or those? Are you calling agents on those days?
I do go to those office meetings the first Monday and Tuesday of the month, and then after that, so the second, third, and fourth Mondays, I'm checking in with like my top 40 agents.
Okay,
so
cool.
Pretty straightforward calls. Hey, how's it going? Do you need anything?
Are you ever preparing for those calls with like something we do is so like our director of operations for the company sends out a Sunday's best, which is like sort of a super long-winded email that's, underwriting update, guideline changes, new product announcement, anything like that, right? Like just little nuggets that you can use to have conversations about. My team's job is to take that email, scrub it, and come up with something
like a talking point,
like a go-to conversation, right? So now I get in on a Monday, or in my case, I do agent calls on Thursdays, but I have a clear message, so I'm not having to constantly think about what I'm talking to this person about. It's just, hey, I wanted to give you a quick call, wanted to let you know we just launched a new product, blah blah blah.
Yeah, right? I think that approach is probably better than my approach, because my approach involves, again, shockingly, zero research.
Yeah.
Here's my 40 people, and I call, hey, Darik, it's Joe Massey. It's been a while since we spoke. It's been 2 weeks. What's happening? How's your business? Anything you need from me?
Cool.
And my approach on that, imagine for a second, let's change and do a little role play. Imagine you ran a discount tire.
Okay.
Right? And I work for Firestone. If I called you every week on Monday and said, hey, Darik, it's Joe over at Firestone. I just wanted to check in. Do you have enough tires? Do you need anything from me? Is there anything that I can do to make your business successful during this upcoming week? Would that phone call be weird?
No.
Not at all,
No.
right? Same thing with a real estate agent. Hey, Darik, it's Joe over at Castle & Cook. I just wanted to check in, see if you needed any pre-approvals, see if there's any flyers you need for your listings. What can I do to help make your business successful this week? Nothing? Okay, cool. I'll call you next week on Monday.
Yeah.
So I love your approach. I just take a different one.
Yeah. No, I like it. I think that it's so easy to overthink it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think what I'm kind of gathering is it doesn't matter if you have a talking point or no talking point. It's just a check-in. I think the magic is just doing it, right? Doing it consistently.
And don't be afraid to say, I don't know. People won't make a phone call because they're trying to study and have all this information. If an agent or a client asks me a question that I don't know the answer to, first off, it's pretty rare. Second off, I'm fine saying, you know what? That's a really great question. Yeah. I'm going to have to do some research. I'm making calls for the next 45 minutes, but as soon as that's done, I'm going to research your question and I'll call you back. People respect that.
Totally. And how long does it take you to get through 40?
Hour and 20 minutes.
Hour and 20?
Yeah.
And so you're leaving mostly messages.
Mostly messages.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Or even if they do pick up, it's probably less than a 3-minute call. But what you'll notice is if you're calling that same group of 40 every week, you're going to get.
There's not as much to talk about.
There's not as much to talk about.
Yeah.
Right. But you're only going to get about a third of them.
Sure.
But it's a different third.
Yeah.
Every week because they know what you're calling.
Yeah.
For.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I like that. Okay. So you've got agent calls then Monday, Wednesday's database, Tuesday
we do Tuesday update calls.
Calls.
You know how that works. That's
Thursday
going on
and
right
Friday.
Now. Thursday. So let me pause for a minute. One of the other prospecting things we do is we teach classes that used to be in person. Now we're teaching those online.
Okay.
So we teach those on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Thursdays.
Okay.
Depending, on whatever else is on the schedule. And so let's say we teach a class on a Tuesday and we have 40 people that attend. Well, on Thursday, we're going to make follow-up calls to all of those people. What did you think about the class? What did you learn? Any questions? What buyers are you working with that we can help you with? So Thursday can be a little bit of a, grab bag.
This is every week?
Yeah.
Is that just, are you doing like an Eventbrite to your database, or how are you marketing those classes? And because I've always found that if maybe this again just is my own mental issue here, but it's almost like I feel like I'm diluting myself if I'm doing it too often. And so I'm constantly on one hand, I believe in the structure and the process of it all and having it consistently. But then on the other hand, I'm like, man, I don't know how I feel about, 2 people showing up to a class because I'm doing it all the time.
Yeah, it's a huge pain in the ass if you get low attendance. So what I try to do with classes is I will teach 2 classes in the first week of the month and 2 classes in the third week of the month.
Okay.
And so then first week, class A, that follow-up is made on Thursday. Class B, the follow-up is made the following Thursday. Now, you could say, hey, that's too far behind to make those follow-up calls. Yeah, but we have to have some sort of structure to not dilute the classes and have only 2 people showing up. So that's a great point. You could teach a class every single day, but suddenly you're not going to have anybody in the room. Right. So you have to teach it in kind of a rotating basis. And for me, the right pace is 4 classes a month. So we have, I think my CE accreditation courses, there's 20 of them. So over the course of 5 months, everything gets taught one time.
That's huge because now you've got agents that have to show up, right? So it kind of forces them to show up to your class. I love that. That's great. So you're only doing CE classes?
That's my bread and butter for prospecting. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So you're doing these classes and you said it's every other week. So are you promoting the class on the in-between weeks?
Yeah, we'll promote the class just via Facebook, not even an ad, just a post. Hey, here's what we're going to be talking about. We also have an email blast that goes out, which I think there's 21,000 people on that, which that's every client I've ever done a deal with, every agent that's ever been on either side of a transaction, anybody that's ever come to a class. And I do some investment property trade shows, and I'll always get the sign-in sheet for that. So 21,000 people that at some point have interacted with me. And so we'll blast out the schedule. Hey, here's what we're teaching in April. This day, this day, this day, this day. Here's the Zoom links. And, I'll be real. Sometimes we get 3 people. Sometimes we get 40. I'm teaching a class actually tonight. I have 657 people registered as of when I walked in here today.
What's the topic?
How to pay off your home in 10 years rather than 30.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. Now, I don't think 650 people are going to show,
Yeah.
but I'll probably get about 200.
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
it sounds like it's just all about that consistency too, right? Because over time, like, you didn't have 20,000 people initially, but now that you do, it's like there's almost a snowball effect to where you get attendance for this stuff.
That's right.
That's huge. Yeah.
And they might not have come to a class in 3 years.
Right.
They might have come to how to buy your first home 3 years ago. And now it's 3 years I'm teaching how to buy your first investment property. Like, oh, honey, remember when Joe helped us buy our first house? We've got all this equity. Let's go see what he's talking about now.
So it sounds like those classes, though, because you're saying you're sending it out to agents and you're sending it out to past clients. So those are not CE courses. Those are just value, right? You're bringing a ton of value for the agent and the homeowner.
So everything that we teach is open to the public. So even if it's an agent-focused class, clients are still invited. Agents can bring their clients. And sometimes, I always take a poll like, hey, who's in the room? I'd like to understand. Are you an agent? Are you an investor?
Sure.
And I'll say, great, this is a CE approved course. So we're going to touch on some important topics. But because we've got, 7 investors in the room that are not agents, I want to make sure we talk about your questions as well. Right. So just take a quick poll and then you can still cover the important CE material, but also touch on the things that are important to the audience.
So, okay, let's say you had 200 out of the 600 show up tonight. What does your follow-up look like tomorrow?
They will not all get phone calls.
Okay.
A lot of them are going to get a follow-up email.
Okay.
And the people that are most interested, that
Just
are
like a
most
thank you
engaged,
for coming?
Yeah, thank you for coming. If you'd like to learn more, here's the website. If you'd like to learn more, here's my phone number that you can call and we can show you, how you can consolidate debts, how you can, buy an investment property, whatever your specific situation might be.
Very cool.
So with that money, it's going to be a follow-up email blast. And then there will be phone calls because you can tell, right? You get the chat log. You can tell who's most engaged. So probably those top 20 people are
Who's
going to get a phone
moderating
call.
that for you?
You know what? I'm doing that myself, actually.
What?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. So I got to be able to present and
you got to get
chat.
Nicole to do that for you, man.
It's after hours, man. She's off the
She's
clock
off.
at 5.
Yeah. You can't ask her to do that.
No, I try to be really, really respectful of my team's time. That hey, they work from 8:30 to 5, but I want 100% during that time, and I'm going to work the extra hours in the weekends because I want them to have a family.
That's awesome, man. Well, you're super well respected in the industry, and I appreciate you coming on here today.
Thank you.
Where do you think the future of our business is headed?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some consolidation. I think there's going to be some people getting out of the business. I think it's unfortunately an aging business. Think about how many young loan officers do you know? None, right? They don't exist because it's really hard to know how to prospect, to know how to talk to somebody, and to know how to lend money. It's a really, really hard job. So I do think there's going to be some automation. I do think there's going to be some tools that are going to minimize what does a loan officer do, but a really educated, intelligent loan officer like yourself, like me, there's always going to be a place for that. There was a time if you wanted to book a trip, you had to call your travel agent. Now you can go on Expedia, Travelocity, etc. You can figure it out, but if you really want like a client-centric experience, you still call a travel agent. And I think that there's still going to be a role for guys like me and you, at least for the next 10, 15 years, at least until we reach retirement. After that, they might phase us out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's going to be a combination of kind of fundamentals, right? The old school sounds like the way you and I both have done things, which is, phone calls and belly to belly, face to face, right? Events, classes, just a traditional sales approach.
Yeah.
But I think the future is going to include data, automation, and content.
A really interesting stat, NAR does the the home buyer survey. It's not first time home buyer, but they survey like 50,000 people that bought a home last year. And a question that really blew me away in the mortgage section, they said, how important is it to you to have someone that you can sit down with to go over the details on your mortgage, sit down face to face? 85% of respondents said it is very important.
5%.
Now, the really interesting thing is 50% of respondents also said it's really important for me to be able to get a same day pre-approval. Now, you can get that through some of the apps like push button get mortgage. You and I see that all the time. But it really was surprising to me. We all think of, I want the Amazon experience, and people do want that, but they still want somebody they can sit down, because this is not buying a toaster off of Amazon. This is making an extraordinarily huge purchase. So the loan officer job is not going to go away as long as 85% of people still want to sit down with me and you.
Yeah. I think the key is, as people are evolving in the industry and trying to, pivot and generate more business, I think so much of it is going to be a marketing play, which is, just makes everything that much more complicated, right? Because you're right. And I think a lot of guys getting into the industry, I'm sure you've run into this too, but it's like, somebody that has never been in the industry, there's sort of this belief that you're this banker person that has to be really good at math, right? Or like a finance guy. And although that's super helpful to have that understanding and be able to do quick math in your head, I always say, but it's a sales profession, right? Like, you could be phenomenal at math, but if you don't know how to deal with people and sell, your math ain't going to do shit for you.
You're going to be the best. You're going to be the smartest math guy who's broken his basement.
And now I think it's, hey, you've got to not only be good at math, but you also have to be able to prospect, sell. Now you're going to have to market at scale to build trust on a high level.
Yeah.
And that's
so many companies are trying to do that with a marketing department that's doing that for people, but it gets washed out or filtered out, right?
Totally.
Because if you and I work at the same company and you and I have the exact same marketing message, and the only difference is which one of our headshots is on there, all of a sudden it fades away. What are Darik and what are Joe doing? It doesn't matter, right? You have to find a way to be unique. Now, you and I could have the exact same message, but what if we're doing it on video? I'm saying it with different tone, different speed, different pace. It's my face. You could say the exact same words. We're both going to get better response, but people try to duplicate it with a marketing department that says, okay, we're going to push this out and put Joe's picture on this one and Darik's picture on this one and, Janie's picture on this one. How come nobody's responding? Well, no shit. It's all the same. Right? It's got to be unique.
Yeah. And this is where I think the personal brand space is just, I think it's just sort of everyone's scratching the surface, but it's like, to your point, if we both have content that goes out and we're saying the exact same thing, the reality is half the people aren't going to like me and, half the people aren't going to like you or whatever, right? Like, some people are going to just be attracted to your message and the way you say it. But it's almost like the podcast and the content is now the new business card. If you don't have that, people are wanting to know, right, that they can trust a personal brand,
right,
even if they've never met you.
That's right. Well, I walked in here today. What were you doing when I walked in your office? You were looking at my Facebook page.
I was looking at your Facebook.
Right? You were getting to know me a little bit.
Yep.
Same thing. If you think your clients are not looking at your Facebook page or not looking at your LinkedIn, you are high.
Yeah.
Right? If you're putting crazy things on your Facebook, political or anti this message or anti this group, you are costing yourself money. As far as I'm concerned, Facebook is all positive all the time, and the message should be clear that I am open to do business with anyone and everyone. And if you're not doing that, you're making a big mistake. Not that you are, but to the listeners out there,
for sure,
it should be all positive, and don't say any divisive comments, because you're not going to gain followers. You're just going to alienate some people.
For sure. Well, what would you say to somebody that's listening to this and maybe they're in a job that they hate, right? Or maybe they've been doing sales, but in a different industry, and they're like, man, maybe I get into the mortgage business, right? Like because this is an industry that has changed your life. It's changed my life.
Absolutely.
What would you say to that person, though? What are some words of advice or wisdom you would give them if they were looking to get into the business?
If you're looking to get into the mortgage business, I would find the smartest and most successful loan officer that you can find in your market, or that is in the niche that you want to be in. And I would go and I would spend time with them, and I would be willing to bet, we'll come back to this question in a minute, but I would tell you to go talk to them and do precisely what they say. And so my question for you, Darik, if a brand new person who has never been in the mortgage business and called you and said, hey, Darik, my name's Joe. I don't know anything about mortgages. Can I come and spend 2 hours with you and you tell me how you do your job, because I'm really interested in being in the mortgage business? Would you say yes?
I would.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Anybody that's at your level, my level, who's successful, If you call them and say, hey, I'd like to spend time with you to learn about how you do your business because I might want to get into it, I guarantee 100% of those people will say yes.
And by the way, like, I always think about this now, but looking back, if I would have been smart enough at the time to think like that and take that approach, I'd be a lot further ahead, right?
Right.
I think that there's sort of this notion that it's like noble to figure it out on your own and you got to cut your teeth and struggle. And it's like, you could, but you don't have to. And if you can time collapse and get around people that are really good at what they do, like a Joe Massey, and you might, and here's the other thing, you might spend some time with a Joe Massey and realize this ain't for you. And it's going to save you a ton of time because it ain't easy.
Yeah, this
right?
job is not all rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah, no.
I assure you.
Yeah. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on. Like, it's amazing. An hour's already gone by, and here we are. I feel like there's so many other things that we could talk about, but I really appreciate it. And for those listening, where can they find you if they wanted to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website is loansbyjoemassey.com. Of course, you can call me anytime, 303-809-7769. But I have to be really clear, if you need a new mortgage, you should be calling Darik because he is the host of the podcast. I'm just here as, the color commentator. But I'm so grateful for you making the time and having me on. Thank you.
You got it, buddy. All right.
Turn that loss to a check. Every time that I see a limit, I push right past it. Don't care if you got here first, the one to win is the last one standing. Say my life is like luck. Nah.